And welcome on in to another episode of Getting Well with Terry and Friends, NHL Season Preview Show Edition. This is pre recorded, so we are not live. Thought I would throw that out there. But today we're going to be talking about the Boston Bruins. And we will jump right into it here and look at additions and subtractions. What has Boston done this offseason? And really, not a whole lot. They brought in Keith Kincaid as a third goaltender here. David Krejci re-signed with the team after taking a year off, and Pavel Zacha in a trade, losing Fagarty, Eric Holla in that trade for Pavel Zacha, Cameron Hughes, Josh Brown, Grosenick, and Anton Blid. So the guys really that they lost weren't main guys on the roster, but they didn't really add any main guys either. Krejci, I'm assuming, will be their second line center. So that is kind of a big addition, but he just took the year off. What kind of Krejci are we going to get? That's the question. If he starts out slow, uh, that could be a big problem for this team going forward. Nick, what do you think additions and subtractions for the Bruins?
Yeah, yeah. Question marks. Obviously, Keith Kincaid, he's going to be a third string goaltender, so that's not really that big of an impact. They still got their top two goaltenders there. Krejci, yeah, as you mentioned, what Krejci are we getting? He hasn't played NHL hockey in over a year. So are we going to get someone who's been working and making himself better over the last year, or do we have someone who's maybe gone down a little bit? And then Pavel Zacha, uh, he's a decent addition. Looking at it, he's still 25 years old. He was a top draft pick in 2015. I think he was like sixth overall or something like that to New Jersey. So he was a highly touted prospect. He's been a little bit disappointing in New Jersey. They lost Lazar and Hala, which were like third and fourth string or line guys. Grosenick, which was I think like their fourth or third or fourth goaltender. So kind of they replaced Kincaid with Grosenick. Overall, they really didn't do too much. Nothing to make me think they're a better team this year.
Yeah, I think that's fair. They didn't really add anything substantial. But we will look at their prospects and their upcoming free agents for this upcoming season. And when it comes to prospects, yikes. Boston is in trouble. They don't have a lot of top prospects. Obviously, Fabian Lysell that they just drafted, Mason Lowery, Brett Harrison, Georgi Merkulov, Johnny Beecher. None of these guys are top end prospects in the NHL. Obviously, prospects surprise, and there are diamonds in the rough, but none of these guys are projected to be top players in the NHL. So um, Boston definitely has issues with the prospects. And then when we look at upcoming free agents, Pastrnak, Nick Foligno, Pavel Zacha, Craig Smith, Patrice Bergeron, Thomas Nosek, Chris Wagner, David Krejci, Connor Clifton, and then RFA's Frederick and Swayman. This Bruins team, if they do take a step back this year, could look drastically different next year. Or they could resign most of these guys and kind of look the same. But there is definitely a potential, Boston, if they want to tear this down, this is a good time. Yes, Pastrnak, maybe not a player you want to trade away, but you could get a nice haul for him. A lot of these guys at the trade deadline, if Boston wanted to go that route, could get a lot for some of these guys. So we'll have to see what they do with the free agents. Prospects not too good, but a lot of free agents coming soon for Boston. Nick, prospects, free agents, what do you think here?
Yeah, I think I kind of look at the Bruins similar to I believe the way I looked at the Penguins when we did that show, and it's gonna be very dictated on how they're playing to start the year. Because if they're doing good, obviously that you're not going to see what I'm going to suggest. But if they're looking like they're not going to make a playoff spot, maybe we're seeing teams like the Islanders step up this year, or the Senators, or the Red Wings, or whoever, and the Bruins are not a team that look like they're going to go to the playoffs because they are going to be missing Marchand to start the year. They're going to be missing McAvoy, and they're going to be missing Grzelcyk, two big blue liners, and one of their top guys. This team can struggle to start the year, and if they are struggling and they're not going to be competing this year, Foligno's gone, Zaka's gone, Smith could be gone, Pastrnak, you can get a great haul for him. Bergeron, you can probably get decent for him. I mean, you can probably get some really good returns and replenish what I'm hearing is one of the worst prospect pools for in the NHL right now. So if they're not doing well, you can see most of these players get dealt at the trade deadline if they start off slow, especially with missing a couple of their big players to start the year. So this team could look, as you mentioned, drastically different. And I think that this team could be a big seller come trade deadline if they're not anywhere near a playoff spot.
All right. I do think they re-signed Swayman and Frederick. Obviously, RFA's younger type players. Those guys will most likely be re-signed. But the top list of guys could very well be on their way out. Now we'll take a look at what Cap Friendly has as their possible lineup here. Opening day lineup for the Bruins. We have Pavel Zacha with Bergeron and DeBrusk. Krejci is with Hall and Pastrnak. Nick Foligno, Charlie Coyle, Craig Smith. Frederick with Nosek and Steen. Stanika and Wagner. Scratches. Lindholm and Carlo. Riley Clifton. Forbert and Zaboral with Carrick as a scratch. And then Swayman and Allmark in net. And Svedabak is their third, I guess. Now their third would probably be Kincaid, who they just got. But prospect-wise, Svedabak. Overall, they still have some good pieces in the top six. Their third line may not get a lot of offense, but they are a good checking line. Probably would be better for a fourth line as a contender. But Foligno still might have some in the tank. He's definitely slowing down. So overall, this Bruins team, as Nick said, without Marchand and McAvoy and Grzelcyk, but especially Marchand and McAvoy, those are two players that other guys are going to have to step up. And we'll see if they do or not. Maybe Boston's a team you want to try to fade at the beginning of the year. We'll have to see. Nick, what do you think? Possible lineup for the Bruins?
Yeah, I think Boston's definitely a team I'm going to look to fade in the beginning of the year. I'm already looking at the Washington Capitals minus 120 against them opening night at home. So I do think this is a team that is going to get off to a little bit of a slow start. Obviously, it looks like from the projected lineup, they're breaking up the perfection line with no Marchand. They're trying to balance them out, which I think maybe depth can be a big question mark for them then, because Frederick, Nosek, Steen as your fourth line, you're not going to get too much from them. Foligno, Craig Smith, you may get a little from him, and Charlie Coyle, that's a decent third line center. But I mean, looking at this team, they got decent talent, but I just think that they may be missing a little bit too much. And this is a team that could take a step back. Patrice Bergeron is getting a year older. All these guys are getting a year older, and I think this is one of those years where we can see some of these teams that have these more veteran-laden lineups start to take a step down, like Boston, like Pittsburgh, stuff like that, where we're going to see these teams eventually just father time catches up to them. And I can see that with some of these teams. We're already seeing it with the injuries with them. But I can also see it with potentially a drop-off in what we see from Bergeron. So I'm not too high on this Bruins team. I can see them struggling to start the year.
All right. Well, we're kind of in agreement there. Yeah, I think they'll struggle definitely at the beginning of the year. And if you get into too deep of a hole, I guess people say it's just the beginning of the season, and that's fine. But if you get into a deep hole at the beginning of the year, you can ask Nick. Unfortunately, that was out of their control. But if you get into a deep hole, sometimes it's too big to come back from.
Yep.
So that's definitely something to look at. looking at the Bruins' last 5 years and their futures, they've made the playoffs for a while. They've been that playoff team. And last year, the first time they lost in the first round for quite a few years. Still got 107 points, the same that they got in 2018, 2019 when they went to the Stanley Cup. But now their point total is 96.5. As we've discussed, most likely they are going to have a rough start to the year. So 96.5, that means 11 points. Will they lose 11 points? So 5 wins. Obviously, there's overtime losses and stuff like that as well. But I do think Boston's going to take a step back. I'm just not sure how big of a step back. Kind of like Pittsburgh and Washington, they have looked like they should be taking steps back, but they haven't quite done it yet. It will happen eventually. I'm just not sure if it's going to happen this year. To make the playoffs, I would have to go with no at plus 155. Obviously, I'm not taking yes at minus 180. I wouldn't take a minus 180. But the fact that no plus 155, I like this Detroit. I like the Detroit team. I like Detroit's offense. I like their youth, the speed that they're going to have. Obviously, you have Toronto, which is a better team than this Boston team. Goaltending's Toronto's question mark, but it is what it is. You have the Panthers. You have Tampa. And then, yes, we do have Ottawa hanging around, Montreal as well. I do think Boston will be better than Ottawa. But I don't think it's going to be by a lot. Like, I could see it being very close. I'm not very high on Ottawa myself, but that's just my opinion. I think they're going to be an over team, but we'll get to that in the Ottawa show. But Boston, I think they are going to take a step back. I don't think they make the playoffs. And yeah, so I would look at plus 155 no to make the playoffs. Obviously, if I don't think they're making the playoffs, I'm not going to bet them to win the division of the cup. So no would be the only future I would look at. I'm not going to touch the point total, but it would be a lean with the under, but I'm not going to take it myself. Nick, last 5 years for the Bruins, pretty successful. Futures for this year, what do you think?
Yeah, I think there's a reason why this number's dropped. We have this Bruins team that I think did not get better when teams around them did. I know you're not high on the Senators, but they did improve over the offseason. The Sabres are an improving team. The Red Wings are an improving team. The Islanders are not going to be what they were last year. The Blue Jackets are an improving team. So this Eastern Conference in general is very improving. And then they also get in their division the Maple Leafs, which are a great regular season team. Florida, which is the reigning President's Trophy winners, and the 3-time defending Eastern Conference champions, and they've won 2 out of the last 3 Stanley Cups in the Lightning. So they have a tough division to deal with, and they got up-and-coming teams around them. So yes, and they're going to be missing some of their big players to start the year, like we've been harping on all show long. So I definitely do think they dropped this many points. There's a reason why this line is this low, and absolutely no for playoffs. I see them as a wild card team at best. I think that the wild card spots can be stolen by New York and Pittsburgh potentially, or Detroit, Ottawa, someone like that can be better than Boston. I see Boston on the outside looking in, and if I see them as a wild card team at best, I think there's value at taking plus money for them to miss the playoffs. So, yeah, I'm going to take no at plus 155 for them to miss the playoffs. I would also look towards the under 96.5.
All right. Yeah, if it was like minus 110 to make the playoffs, minus 110, no, then maybe I want to look at it. But plus 155,
yeah,
that's actually a pretty good price for this Bruins team. But that is the Bruins show. If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the content, smash the like button. We appreciate all the support. And definitely tune in to the channel and look at all the other NHL shows we've done. By the end of it, we'll have done all 32 teams. So to make sure if you've missed your favorite team, you can watch their preview show in the playlist on the YouTube channel. Thanks everybody for watching, and have a good one, guys.